Hey everybody, welcome to our community call today on Tuesday, March 26th. We're going to be having a check-in with the Stewardship Circle for RCC. They're going to let us know how things are going with the transition process, and we'll get to know them a little bit and have a chance to discuss some things. Before we get started, I'd like to share our RCC core values and community agreements, just to let you know a little bit more about who we are and the kind of spaces that we're trying to create here. Oh, and there's Oren popping in. And let me...
Last one off camera over here, but thank you, Tatiana.
Welcome, Oren. Glad you could join us. We're just about to share the RCC core values and community agreements here. Here we go. The RCC core values, I've popped a couple of links in the chat so that you can find out a little bit more about these, but the very basic core values that RCC is gathered around are: one, the power of place and space, the interplay of inner and outer work. So that's not just the work that we're doing in here, but the work we're doing in the world and the balance between them, the way that they feed and help each other. We're also committed to universal flourishing, meaning not just the flourishing of people, but all beings, and believe that that's all interconnected. Our community agreements, when we're on these calls, we ask people to speak from their own experience, that your voice and your story are important. So if you feel like there's something that you want to share, or if something's rising up inside you, we invite you to speak into the space and let us know what's coming up for you. We're all knowers and learners in this space. So you might be an expert on something, and we would love to hear what you have to say about the things that you know. And also, if you have questions, please feel free to ask questions. This is an open space for that. Silence can be centering, and movement and sound can also be centering. So we use practices that may bring us into quiet, or we might invite people to connect via song or poetry, movement, anything like that. So we ask that you keep other people's stories confidential. So if there's a story that you want to share, but you don't want it to be recorded, you're always welcome to ask us to pause the recording, and we will do that. And also, if you're wanting to share something that you learned from someone who shared their story in one of our spaces, share what you learned, but take their name off of it. Let them tell their own stories in their own ways. And this is an invitational space, so please participate as you are able. If you need to come in late, or if you need to leave early, we understand. If you need to get some tea, or take a break, stretch your legs, we invite you to be human in this space, as we are all human. So, also, we invite you to hold discomfort with grace and deep listening. Sometimes the topics that we cover are uncomfortable, and we just need to be in that uncomfortable space in order to really go deep with them and learn from them. And we're not here to fix each other. We're just doing our best. We're chatting with one another and helping one another out as we build community together. And this one is from our old program director. He really loved this quotation, and I do too, from Dr. Leticia Nieto. Choice is the smallest unit of liberation. So we do our best to give you as many choices as we can. And I hope you participate knowing that you do have choices. And yeah, we want that. I'll stop sharing here. And this call, we're going to be checking in with the Stewardship Circle for RCC. And I'll do a very quick introduction of the members of the circle who've joined us today. So if you'll take a look at your screens, you can probably see, I'll start off first with Francisco. Oh, we've got another person joining us. Francisco is the ED at Pendle Hill in Pennsylvania. Francisco, do you want to give a little wave? Okay. And then next we've got Nanci Lee. Nanci is working with Tatamagouche Center in the Mi'kma'ki area. Is that right, Nanci? up in Nova Scotia. Yeah. And then we've got also Michael Shewburg. Michael, if you want to give a wave, he's at Five Oaks Center in Paris, Ontario. And then we've got Oren. Oren is at Commonweal, ED at Commonweal. Oren, do you want to say hi? And then last but not least, we have Kirstin. And Kirstin is at Gilchrist Retreat Center in Three Rivers, Michigan. Welcome all, and I'll hand it over to who's going to start us off? Michael, is that right? Oh, yeah, also, thank you. Thank you, Nancy, for the reminder. I'd also like to introduce Brenda. Brenda, do you want to give a little wave? Brenda is our program director for the Racial Healing Initiative, and we always love having Brenda here.
Amazing, Erin. Thank you so much for the introductions and grounding us in what we believe as members of the RCC, as individuals who are here on this call, and also collectively as our retreat center community in Canada and the United States. And I'm going to just spend some time grounding us in this time and space. I just literally came out of leading a 2-day retreat called Simply Be, and I was asked to lead a grounding practice for us. So I feel very grounded right now, actually, and I'm really grateful for that. So I'm going to ask folks just to find yourself in the chair that you're in, or if you're standing, just feel yourself grounded in the place that you are, knowing below you is Mother Earth that cares for us and sustains for us and provides all that we need. And maybe you're in your home, or maybe you're in your office at your retreat center, or somewhere on the road in between. Know that you're on this sacred ground. And I'm just going to invite us in a moment. We'll each take a breath. And I just invite you to do a little bit of a body scan and just place your hand on one or two places where you need this sacred energy from the earth to come and restore you. And then we'll participate in a practice together for restoration. So let's take a breath in a moment of silence and a body scan. Hoping that you found a spot on your body where you need this restorative energy to come to. And one of the ways we can create energy is through creating friction. So I just want to invite you to rub your hands together like this, to know that all over Turtle Island, we are gathered together. We don't know where everyone is yet, but in a minute, we're going to just release this energy that we're creating, trusting that it's going to find its way across the rivers and the lakes and the prairies and the mountains to each person that needs it in the place that they need it. Are your hands good and warm? Is the healing energy in there? We're going to release it in 3, 2, 1. Receive this energy from this community in the way that you need it to be present in this time. May our speaking and our listening be good. And the question that we have for you is, what do you need from our time together today? So you're invited to consider what that question is, and you can either, if you feel more comfortable putting it into the chat box, you're welcome to type it in. You're also welcome to raise your hand and we'll get you unmuted and you can share what it is you need from this time today. If someone feel ready to ask, to let us know what you need. Or maybe there's something that you don't need from today, and maybe it would be helpful for us to know that. Sonia, not to be in charge of this meeting. We got you, Sonia. You don't have to be in charge.
I'm happy to share briefly. Wanting grounding, which I feel like you just did. So thank you, Michael. And relationship.
Thank you, Brenda. Grounding and relationship. I got a heart from Justine on that one.
Michael, when you prompted us to put our hands in a place that we identify that needs some loving touch, I said to myself internally, my hands won't cover my full body. So a space for being community and knowing that I am not walking this path alone is what I need today.
Thanks, Francisco. Pilgrims together on a journey.
Yeah, and I can just add, I've gotten to know the Stewardship Circle members quite well over the last few months and longer, but I don't know how well the community knows you, how visible you've been, so there may be a desire to get to know you too. They're really nice, just FYI.
Thanks, Erin. We're pretty fun, I think. So, but yes, we really do want to connect. For those of you just joining, we're currently asking the question, what do you need from this time together today? So welcome to those who have just joined the call.
I guess I would say I came on to hear what the vision of the circle is as we're in a time of transition. You're always looking for guidance and direction. And so to hear that, and it could be murky, but yet to hear some kind of vision from the circle of where RCC goes from here.
Thanks, Paul, for reminding us, calling us to that. There's a few notes going into the chat here. Oren says listening, and he's got a heart on that one. And Bill says just looking to get acquainted. And we have Jenna saying, I'm not arriving with any particular need, here for support and to hear more what we all need in this time of transition. And someone has also hearted that. 2 hearts now. Victoria, welcome. Just curious to hear about the transition. We're definitely going to be sharing about that. And Leslie, thank you for echoing Paul's weird words, here for connection and to learn about vision and strategy for the future of RCC. Thank you very much, Leslie. And Andreas is arriving open and curious. William, welcome. First time in the group. We're really glad you're here in your transition time. And we're sorry that your microphone and video aren't working. So we're glad that you're listening in, and feel free to add your thoughts or questions into the chat, and whoever's leading will definitely pay attention to that. Welcome. Just going to give a little 30 seconds more for any other little bits of what we need from this time together to rise to the surface.
I will add my voice. I think I didn't expect this transition when I rejoined the Stewardship Circle just last October. And so it's been quite unexpected. And there's sadness around Ben's leaving. And also I recognize the opportunity of transition to kind of reorient ourselves to our core values and how we want to be together as an organization. So I'm also thankful for the opportunity of the transition and really long for the wisdom of the larger community as we do that. Because in any transition, you have many choices that you could make. And so I'm hoping to harvest the wisdom of this group and have a sense that we're moving forward as a collective, not just as a stewardship circle.
Thank you, Kirstin. I put a little heart on that one as well. I see Paul's question, what does the stewardship circle need from us? Thank you, Paul. There are many needs, and we'll continue to do our best to share what those are as the time goes on. And Oren and Francisco are going to give us an update here. And I feel like that's a really good transition into that. So I will mute myself and over to these two.
Well, thank you, Michael. And it's interesting that in the little time that we have been here together, the word transition has come so many ways, in so many ways, and with so many flavors. I would like to depart from a metaphor here, a metaphor that we are living through, the transition in the season, yeah? And I want you to think about RCC in those terms, yeah? So all of us had the opportunity to celebrate Ben as he recognized that was his time to move away from RCC. All of you knows that Ben didn't leave RCC in bad term. It was just a personal need that he needed to fulfill, as he recognized that his gifts were already in place and that he already have done what he could offer RCC. And I am one of the many voices that are so grateful to Ben for what he did in accompanying us, and at the same time for recognizing that a personal need and moving forward toward what is next for him. That I start there because that may be perceived as his RCC is into a winter season, where we can see that no many things are necessarily blooming, but we are on our way toward spring, yeah? On our way toward spring. And I say that because Ben transition find us with a strong stewardship circle. And I'm not talking necessarily about me, but about my colleagues within the stewardship circle, people that has dedicated time and energy. Since Ben announced to us that he was going to transition from his role within RCC, the stewardship circle has been meeting every week. Just to give you a sense of, oh, well, we need to tend the path, because if this is the time for us to start planting seed with what already we have in the ground, the gardeners need to be planting and need to be tending to the soil. So we have been doing that, and the first couple of weeks, Ben was very instrumental to us in supporting what he felt that was the the area of the garden that need the most attention from his perspective. And we have taken this task with the tools and with the time, with our limitations, including financial resources limitation, to see, here we have this beautiful garden that all of us has contributed to. How is that we can continue providing the network of retreat center a vibrant space for us to continue the work of transformation that our retreat center needs, and at the same time providing a platform that allow us to connect, support one another, and keep dreaming about what is possible for RCC to keep blooming. So this is where we are in this critical moment where we are in need of rethinking, reimagining what the director of RCC position may be in the next couple months. I think that again, being very grateful to Ben, that we have learned that that position on its own also has grown and need to be reshaped, a little bit, need to be reevaluated to see what else can be that position serve. And at the same time, with the open question of how that will speak to the other needs of the RCC network for us to keep expanding. I am glad that Erin already was part of our team, and she is graciously agreed to expand her role in the service that she does for us. And also Brenda, that is leading the Racial Healing Initiative and navigating with us what potential programs also can be grown from this experience. So this is where we are. This is where we are today, with a strong sense of we want to maintain this connection with all of you, and we want to keep dreaming and to keep reimagining the future with all of you. I don't want to be a monologue, so I will invite Orange to talk a little bit about, Francisco has used this metaphor, what is in the ground for us in the next couple months. And when I said the next couple months, we are talking about in short term, 3 to 4 months for you to have an idea of what are the things that are on the ground for us. Oren, I think that you are ready for that.
Gracias, hermano chico. I'm very much aware that I'm talking to a screen full of executive directors or people that had that position or near that position. So some of the questions that are probably coming up are like, okay, and what's happening? I think as Francisco said, the Stewardship Circle, while not officially a board, has really stepped up and is guiding this. I think I will call it evolution instead of transition, because I think that we are really evolving, as RCC has done since day one, into a new place. The Fetzer Institute has recognized it and helped us with some additional funding so we can keep going. So on that level, all of you EDs are worried about that. I think we introduced Brenda, but Brenda is leading the Racial Healing Institute, has been working. Oh, I see. Victoria was our first Racial Healing Initiative Director. Thank you, Victoria. It's wonderful to see you here. If you haven't followed up what Victoria has been doing for the last year with her 3 Black Men Project, I highly recommend checking that out. But Brenda is working with her team on finding additional funding to continue the RHI work that has been funded by Kellogg for the last 4 years. And I am feeling cautiously optimistic that that will continue and will continue to evolve again as we learn I mean, there's kind of this constant feedback loop happening with RCC. The Stewardship Circle now filling a lot of the functions together with Aaron. So we're at a place that it actually feels really solid. It feels like there's a strong team in place. We just put together our budget for next year. We have the funding to continue for another year. We have, well, not a whole year, I should say. Let me pull that back a little bit. We're not there yet, but well, I'll let Michael touch that. The leadership of the organization is now secure with a combination of Aaron, Brenda, and the Stewardship Circle. There are several hubs that have started and will continue. Some stuff we might pull back from in the next few months just to adjust to basically the human resources that we have right now. So we probably won't be initiating anything new in the next 8 to 12 weeks. And in that time, we'll be regrouping to kind of figuring out what is the next step in terms of what the leadership of RCC is. Keeping in mind that we learned a lot from what Ben did, and also recognizing that we're in a different place. You know, Ben was kind of like the director for the pandemic, and thank God. And we got through that, and now we're exploring new things. So I'd say that at Commonweal, I work with about 40 different programs. I see these kind of evolutionary moment, and RCC is in a very solid place in terms of leadership, in terms of access, in terms of community. And I think with that, if there's any questions about what Francisco and I talked about, we can take them now, or I could pass it on to Michael. You can do the virtual hand or just talk. Leslie.
So nice to see everybody. I feel better already. You alluded to the hubs. I'm just wondering if you could briefly talk about where the resiliency project fits into the evolution.
That's a very good question. Resilience was one of the subjects that has emerged again and again and again. It's something that I know that both in your role with Brighton Bush and the Eco Fund, as well as Commonweal and other retreat centers, it will definitely be a priority. Probably not much happening in the next 6 weeks as we regroup the leadership of the organization, but that is going to be with under Ben's leadership, with the listening circle, the stewardship circle, and his other communication points, resilience was a very high priority. So I can personally guarantee, though it's not my decision to make, but a lot of the stewardship circle we're committed to looking at kind of like we have the Racial Healing Institute, which is key to RCC. The resilience work is right up there. During the next, we can call the next 2 months transition time. During the transition time, we probably won't be initiating a lot of new work. So the resilience might be on hold, though those that have been part of the conversation, we should definitely stay in touch. There's no reason to stop those conversations that are already happening.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Obviously, my passion. I feel like they're cousins to the Racial Healing Initiative, and could family members, and a strong potential funding source as we start branching out for more funding beyond the one funder that we've been dealing with. Yeah,
that's going to be essential and part of the conversations that we have.
Thanks, Oren.
Michael, do you want to shed some light on something?
I can choose anything I want. Oh,
no.
I'll follow the agenda. Got it. Okay. Well, friends, and a few of you have asked in the chat, what can we do individually, or what can our retreat centers do to support the stewardship committee? Which, in my opinion, that sounds to me like what can we do to support RCC? The stewardship committee is just a circle of RCC, and we're doing our best to guide and direct on all of our behalf where we're going right now. One of the topics that we have been talking about at RCC is what kind of organization is the RCC? What is a collaboration? We have over 300 retreat centers that are connected to RCC. And we've talked about, are we a membership organization? Should there be a membership fee? Should there be different levels of membership fees? What do you get? You know, if you have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you know, and we've been talking a lot about this. And we haven't settled on any conclusion of what kind of parameters might exist. But we do find ourselves in this moment slightly short on what it would take to bring RCC through this full year. We know that we're going to hear soon back from the Kellogg Foundation about RHI, and we're really hopeful that that funding will come through. We do have this extra funds from the Fetzer Institute, which is, as far as we know at this point, the last funds we should receive from them. And so to be able to continue this work, we're deeply considering what and how we might generate some revenue to make it through. So we want to do a temperature check with this group because you're the ones that have signed up today. And so you'll be the ones to tell us if this idea that we're going to propose, do you think it would hit the road and that folks would buy into this idea or not? Or what else could we do to add or make this even better? So I'm going to pitch you this idea and then we'll open up the chat box or the room for your thoughts and considerations about that. So I've crafted a letter that we're hoping to send out or adapt after this meeting today. That would be a one-time ask to our collaboration, to invite our collaboration to together raise around $100,000, which seems like a lot of money. But if we look at our collective group and the capacity that each of our centers have to give on different levels, a one-time ask to help us boost and maintain where we're going so that we can continue to do work on things like the resiliency initiative, like the retreat center, the RHI program, all of these pieces that we're working on. Do you think that your center would be interested in contributing? So in the letter that I'm writing, I'm personally contributing, not personally, I'm asking that Five Oaks will contribute $1,000, which is within our ability in terms of our annual budget to be able to contribute, noting that over these last 4 to 5 years, Five Oaks and myself as executive director here have received so much from this initiative, so much from this collaboration. I think back to, you know, being alone in the pandemic and wondering if we're going to make it through and finding my way to these community calls to people that were able to give suggestions and be pastoral to one another and to be caring to one another. To think back to being first-time director at a place and finding my way to a place like this, to finding my way to an RCC retreat, or being a part of liberating conversations about racial healing. All of these have added benefit to the work of Five Oaks. And so for me, I feel really able to answer this call to contribute towards a collective pot that will help sustain the RCC. What this is not asking is for a regular annual giving of that amount. It's a one-time pledge or contribution to help us through this next. And when I say us, I mean the collective, all of us, not the Stewardship Circle, through to the next season, as Francisco said, towards spring. So this is our ask, and we're asking your input today about whether or not you think this would fly across the network or not. I'll also just quickly note before I get to Leslie, there is a fundraising circle. They are working on fundraising strategies. They have a lot of really, really great ideas. And those are all pieces that are going to come out. This ask is a specific fundraising ask to help bridge a gap. So Leslie and then Leslie. So Leslie Hoffman first.
You actually just, I think, answered. I wanted to ask a clarifying question because I heard you first say membership and my spidey senses went up because of my experience with Holistic Centers Network, because RCC, in my opinion, has been doing the work that HCN longed to do and not charging anybody any money. But as you explained it more, just to confirm, we're reframing this as kind of a reality check with the rest of the organizations asking if they can to make a contribution. So it's a direct ask and it's not a membership. We're not changing our model of RCC delivery of community outreach. Is that right? Am I hearing that right?
Correct. Yeah, this is not a move towards membership. The steering committee has talked about whether or not RCC should have a membership model. And what we've learned is that people's experiences of membership model organizations is not just one, that there are many different ways that membership models exist. And so we haven't continued that conversation. This is a one-time. RCC needs the support of the collaboration to bridge this gap, to have enough funds to be able to move to where we're going. So,
Thank
yes.
you for that clarification. And I do think that you're wise about the membership, you know, again, based on my experience with the Holistic Centers Network. You know, it's a lot more complicated than it looks. It's all I can say. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of infrastructure. So yeah, thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Leslie. Leslie Wright.
I guess I would wonder about leaving the language open. You know, so often we want to say to people, this is one time.
Mm.
And then it's not. And that, I think that's perfectly reasonable, that it's going to be important for us, those of us who get value from the network, that we give value as well, whatever we're able to. You know, and I think about it as, I'm not a fundraiser, I'm married to a fundraiser. So it's like I stayed at the Holiday Inn Express, you know, those commercials. But I think, you know, what's the pyramid that would get us to $100,000? And is something like that included in your letter? So, you know, let's be clear in what it will take, because then I think people will reach a little deeper, because you don't really need a whole lot of us to send you $100 checks, because that's like giving you the change in the bottom of our bag. So what does that look like? And, you know, it might, to me, that's sort of an organic, I'm a member of this community and I'm committed to its future sort of exchange.
Thanks, Leslie. That's a really great suggestion and a really good takeaway for myself and the steering committee, which will, if we decide to move ahead with the letter, I think you'll see something like that in the letter. So thank you for that great suggestion. Sorry, I was not paying attention to the chat here. Yes, Leslie, that's a good idea in the letter to ask for people to filter in their own experience of foundations or other groups that could support the RCC, which I think would be helpful information for the fundraising circle to continue. So we can definitely add that in as well. Great idea. So is it fair for me to consider, I see another message. Oh, a hand raised. Jonathan.
Hello, everybody, dear friends. Hello. So thank you for welcoming me here. This is my first time on an RCC call. I just started as the ED of the Kirstin Center 4 weeks ago, so everything is very fresh. Thank you, thank you. I think so I just have like a couple questions, and kind of just coming from that place of ignorance, so to speak, lack of knowledge about the organization. But the chair of our donor development committee handed me, you know, the RCC's various reports, and I was like, wow, this is great. You know, like, oh, bed numbers, right? Like, that's not the thing, you know, like, wow, that's great information for me to know that don't know anything about retreat centers, you know, from my particular background in coming into this. So to me, that's like worth $1,000, that information, right? Like, that's very clear. Like, okay, what's the next thing that's worth $1,000 that could come out of RCC? And so my question basically is, where does the RCC have a sense of kind of where it's wanting to go in this next year? So that like if someone asks me, okay, you know, they're asking for $1,000 or whatever, right? Well, what are you going to get out of that? Do you, if you don't, right? It's okay if you don't have that answer, right? That's like totally okay. But is there a sense of like, we are hoping to do something like this in the next in the next year. This money will help support these potential initiatives. That way, at least I can kind of go back and have a sense of what, again, coming from my place of lack of knowledge, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Jonathan, for your really good question. We probably could spend the whole call answering that specific question. And I will look to my other steering committee members to see if someone else would like to answer that question. If not, I can take a try. Nanci.
I'm happy to start and have others chime in. I think as Kirstin said, we're really interested in digging deep into what does co-creation mean with the broader coalition and collaborative. There's a number of affinity groups, for example, and how do we really foster and support, like we used, for example, the metaphor of a murmuration of starlings, the ability for leadership and wisdom to be rising up from different parts. And so there's that underpins it all. And there's also, as was mentioned, you know, the connections between resilience and racial healing, deepening the racial healing and broadening the racial healing work and its connections to resilience. Land legacies has also come up. And emergent areas that we don't know because we are co-creating. We're also looking into how to be, again, around co-creating and shared leadership, really transparent in our budgeting and, you know, financial matters and those kinds of issues. Not that we haven't been in the past, but it's a process as to how we, as you know, the Racial Healing Initiative, for example, is coming closer inside of RCC. We're looking at, okay, what does all of this mean for us? So those are just some of the very practical aspects, and some of the glue, some of the things that, you know, the heart and glue for all of us, like the community calls that get to the very under the hood things that you talked about for EDs, like how am I, you know, dealing with these HR issues? How am I doing an emergency preparedness program? Those are going to continue because we know that that's how we connect and learn from one another. So.
Thanks, Nanci. Any other stewardship members that want to add to that? Yeah, so I think the goal of this year is to continue to offer what we've offered and also focus on the growth of initiatives like the resiliency work, the next phase of the Racial Healing Initiative, and that very important work of supporting centers in the day-to-day. And all three of the, well, for sure, all two of those for me particularly, and I'm excited to see how resiliency work can be enacted here at Five Oaks. But for me, I kind of look at it as actually a retroactive payment that I kind of owe for all that I've received, and thinking this is for my last 4 years, you know, $250 a year is probably, I probably should be giving more, to be honest, and thinking through that. So thanks, Jonathan, for the really great question. Francisco, and then Andreas.
I just want to add that for me, since I joined RCC and my predecessor also was part of the network, one of the things that we value of being present here is that, you know, in our position, in our retreat center, we don't have other partners at level. So this group has been critical for exploring new ideas or testing all ideas and see, hey, I am dealing with this. How are you coping with this? And I can tell you during COVID, many centers were dealing with closing or semi-closing, or some center disappeared, it was critical for me to have a space where I can find my peers and said, hey, I am dealing with this. What do you think? And I think that there are people that are called consultants that can help you with navigating those type of answers, and they definitely will be very expensive. So I think that, again, there is a lot of value on having some freedom to come to a circle like this and share information that that will be received, hosted with confidentiality, and at the same time, the support that you are receiving are from people that are, if not in the same boat, in the same river.
Thanks, Francisco. Andreas?
Hey, all. I was just going to offer some, I guess, concrete feedback from my end. I think as an organization, I don't think I can sell donating just yet. I think we're still on the journey of, I personally value RCC, but starting to get like organizational buy-in, and that always takes time, and definitely on the journey there. But I think from our end and my end, like I could easily personally give, probably in smaller monthly chunks, but and I think I can also pretty easily sell like a temporary membership kind of thing. But I think just the nature of our organization, I think the journey of it takes time for, I think, networks and organizations like this, and often that just comes with like showing up and building the relationships. But from my end of it, I personally value it a lot, and it's a lot of ways it's a personal investment that I just know. And so I could easily see if there's an easy ask of just like 100 a month, I'd be happy to kind of set that up. But just a recurring monthly would be easy from an individual level.
Thanks, Andreas, for speaking about your personal ability to contribute. And I think that's an invitation to all of us to consider, as an organization, what have we, collectively, what has Five Oaks gained? But it's a challenge to me to think, what personally has this brought to me, and what opportunity do I have personally to give? So thank you for that. And that we can put into that. And Oren has also committed that common will put $1,000. I feel like this is turning into like a telethon, which is which is not what we're hoping to do. We've got $2,000 now. So that's really good.
We need the old-fashioned phones ringing.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, now we're gonna all take turns taking a call. So this has been your training session. Oh my goodness, that's funny. Doesn't PBS do that? I'm not even American, but I think they do. I've seen that. Anyways, okay. Don't turn it away. Clapping. Good, good, good. Any other thoughts? What about the 1% for the planet model? Do you want to tell us about that, Jenna?
Sure. This is specifically in the kind of environmental space, but it's brands, organizations, et cetera, that have dedicated 1% back to nonprofit organizations. So you'll also see this in like the service industry, where restaurants are starting to say, we're just adding 20% to your bill to pay a living wage for our employees. So understanding that a lot of retreat centers right now are already very cash strapped in the COVID return era, what is a way that we can actually push it forward to the people that are investing in retreat centers and saying, this is another way that you're doubling down on your investment. 1% of it is going back to RHI, RCC, whatever you want to call it, but tacking it on. So it's not like a huge ask of the person that's paying for the yoga retreat, but could make a huge difference to this entity and organization over time. I similarly feel like, putting an ask out to a community that is still in a space of recovery feels like the timing might be a little bit off. And it's not to say that it's not but this network isn't super important and the work's super important. But I'm just curious how that's going to land. I'm on the board of the Whidbey Institute, and I know that our retreat center is still very much in a recovery stance and wouldn't have, you know, extra funds to set aside no matter how much we love you. So just thinking about creative ways that money can be generated over time that doesn't have to feel like a perpetual ask, but is just embedded into the way that you all do business.
That's a really helpful suggestion, and I think one that maybe that we should note down for the fundraising circle to have a good conversation about. Thanks, Jenna, for that. I see Brenda.
I'm just so appreciating the collective wisdom in the circle and all the different thoughts and ideas. One of the things that was coming up for me is just some teachings from a lot of my Indigenous elders around how important it is to be in the discernment of, you know, on your spiritual path and your growth as an individual in your life journey and rites of passage and all the things. You want to, in our Moon Circle, we talk a lot about, you need to be in the discernment of when you're with your peers and you're kind of talking about, you know, I would like to say we have 5th grade spiritual homework. And then sometimes we're dropping into 1st grade and tutoring 1st graders. And then also like 5th graders need tutoring from 8th graders, right? And if you're in a good 7 generations mindset, you're always thinking about those sets of relationships and how isolating it can become when you become a director of an organization or a retreat center and you don't have your peers, and how important this is to your own personal development and growth as a leader. I think as we move up in those kind of to those director level jobs, the peer networks become even more and more important for us to be on our own growth and learning journey and not become stagnant with where we're going. So yeah, I'm just thinking about that too with the RCC network and how important this space has been for people through the pandemic and also what it wants to become next. So I'm just really grateful, yeah, for the ways that you all are engaging as peers, how you're offering services to people in your community as that person that's a 5th grader dropping into, you know, working with 1st graders, and then also that there's offerings that RCC will continue to have that are about bringing in tutors around certain particular issues to help. So just holding all of that with a lot of gratitude.
Thank you, Brenda. Jonathan.
Although I've kind of already forgotten what I was going to say or ask, but can we pause the recording? Is that okay? Yeah, because I just want to talk about budget for a second.
One moment.
And thanks, Claire, for your in the box. Just to note that the $1,000 is that's just me noting what Five Oaks could contribute. For others, it might be at that level or more, or so there's not a specific, but I like the idea of a pyramid that kind of outlines if we did this, we could achieve this. Thank you for this very rich conversation, and there's a lot to consider. The stewardship committee is meeting tomorrow, so we will take all of this freshly with fresh eyes and consider how we will craft this going forward. And I will turn it over to, I believe, Kirstin. And I also have to leave, friends, so it's been very nice to see you. I have to pick my son up from school. So I hope you all have a great day, and until we meet again.
Thanks so much, Michael. Our plan, well, first I just want to say I'm so appreciative of all of the feedback and wisdom just on this particular question of fundraising and a specific goal. And yeah, I feel really energized by this conversation. So thank you all for what you've contributed. We had a plan to shift into small groups for a bit, but that generative conversation took a little bit longer than we planned. So I think what I'd like to do is maybe zoom out a little bit. We can keep talking about fundraising because that's definitely in the mix of what the community is working with and what we need right now. But I wondered if we could also zoom out and maybe just take a few minutes individually to reflect on some questions that I will put in the chat. Questions are, what are you feeling hopeful or nervous about? What information do you need from the Stewardship Circle? And what do you have to offer? And that's not just a fundraising question. For, you know, within the theory of change and the collaborative identity that the RCC is holding, there's much more than just a dollar sign that is needed to contribute to the transformation that we're all committed to as individuals, as centers, as a society. So that question is certainly about much more than a monetary gift. And I wonder if we could maybe just take a few minutes to consider those questions individually, and then we'll open the conversation back up again to see what's coming up for people and have some more open space for that versus doing the small groups and then coming back together. Can folks give a thumbs up if that sounds good? Okay, great. We'll take, I'll say just 3 minutes. Think about what question you're drawn to, and then we'll have a time for sharing. Hopefully that felt like enough time to get your wheels turning a little bit. And I see this lovely contribution from Leslie right in the chat, which I will just read to get us started. I'm so conscious of the abundance held among us as a network. I worry that we will get so anxious about money that we will stop trusting in what is possible, that we will pull back. This is a stone soup time. We all bring what we have. For some, that will be money. I appreciate updates, whether written or Zoom, perhaps one time every couple of months. I'm committed to the value of the network and shared learning. Glad to assist. I'm deeply engaged in the Midwest Affinity Group. We'll continue with that, but open to more. That's beautiful. Thank you, Leslie. I love that. Stone soup time. Definitely. And I will say that the Stewardship Circle is talking about doing this kind of connection, update, feedback call regularly for our community calls over the next few months. So glad for that affirmation. And we'll continue to update folks through the newsletter as well. And one thing when we were talking about planning for this call, we were aware that there was a possibility we might get questions that we simply don't have answers for yet. So I would love to take an opportunity, if there are like specific needs for information or questions that people have, even if the Stewardship Circle, like none of us have answers, please voice those or put them in the chat. Or if it's something you just want to send to me directly, you can do that. We'd love to hear those questions because this reciprocal relationship of inquiry and trust is so essential for who we are and what we're doing together. So is there anything coming up that anybody wants to voice as far as a need for information? It doesn't sound or seem like there's anything imminent. But yeah, thank you, Erin, for doing that. As part of this process, when we first were looking at what needed to happen in the transition from Ben's leadership, one of the practical things we did was set up email addresses for all of the Stewardship Circle members. So Erin has put a link in the chat to where you can find all of those email addresses. So if you have if anything comes up about a need for information or a question or an idea, anything, please feel free to get in touch with any or all of us through those email addresses. I'll shift then to what else might be. I appreciate you sharing, Leslie, your concern that we'll get so anxious about money that we'll stop trusting in what's possible. Are there any other things that people are feeling particularly nervous or hopeful about during this transition time? And please feel free to raise your hand or unmute or use the chat to share.
Kirstin, may I say something? I'm hopeful because I jump in maybe once every 8 months because I'm not directly working with the retreat center yet. I was there years ago with RCC, and it's just so nice to both see the elders in the space and so many new faces. That's what's giving me hope, is that this conversation is generative across generations of retreat center lovers and people who are committed to making this work. So just wanted to affirm what the RCC is doing now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justine. Justine worked for the RCC for a little while she was working for a retreat center. And one of the things that the Stewardship Circle has been doing is going back, not just through Ben's exit interview notes, but also Justine's exit interview notes, which has been so helpful to glean from that wisdom about who we are and who we can be. So thank you for sharing now and in the past, Justine. Anything else that folks would like to voice? Oh, I see a chat here from Jonathan. I feel nervous about believing in scarcity and hopeful that there is community to help me remember that there is abundance, both financial and otherwise. Yes, thank you. So beautiful. Abundance and scarcity is a frequent theme in my life at all levels. So I appreciate you raising that, Jonathan. Leslie?
I just want to underline what Justine said, and it's, I'm filled with optimism and anxiety. I guess that's the sign of our times. But my experience with HCN is very much what Justine just said. We have founders and legacy centers and people who created a spiritual movement in America. And you have people showing up to some of our calls that are not organized or funded anymore, that are starting new things all over the world. And I guess the outcome of that is that, and what I'm hearing here, is that there is such a need for this platform, for this group, for this connectedness, to make a shift in resiliency and racial healing and anything, it's going to come from our spiritual selves. And, we're not a union, obviously, but, I don't have any answers, but, I have a lot of experience with holistic centers. I don't even work with them now, and I can't let go. I'm like a junkie for holistic living and spirituality, and I just want to see it through. And I think that again, there's such a need for it, and it's such a solution. And so my hope and anxiety are mixed with, I hope we can continue collaborating. Thank you, committee, Stewardship Circle, for reaching out like you are. I know the pitfalls, well-meaning people in HCM trying to hold it together as volunteers just doesn't work. So money is important anyway. So I thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. And I think there was mention of the fundraising circle, and Leslie's been a part of that. There's a group of folks who have been working on a strategy for the RCC beyond, can we raise $100,000 to do the work over the coming year, but what is the longer term potential for supporting this work collectively, so that we're not depending on volunteers and we're not depending on EDs who are already stretched thin to take on one more thing to keep it going, but that we're collectively investing in something that supports the heart level work that keeps us going as retreat center staff every day, both with the on the ground work to the bigger vision that we're all contributing to for social transformation. And I see there's a couple of things in the chat that I want to note here too. Thank you, Bill. With the Empathy Center, we're a very new organization. We're holding events while at the same time renovating our physical space. We are hopeful about everything and worried about everything. What we can offer is a simple reflective listening practice that we've been offering online at political protests on the left and the right, as well as free online and in person in Santa Barbara, California, facilitation training. And there's some contact information there in the chat if you want to learn more, and you can Google the Empathy Center. Thank you so much for putting your voice in, Bill, and the work that you're contributing in your place. Really appreciate that. And from Brenda, grateful for the many forms of wealth in our network. Sharing an article on 8 forms of capital that expand out our thinking to include and yet go beyond just financial wealth is how we think about wealth in our communities. And there's a link in the chat there too, if folks want to click that and open it up in your browser to read it later. That is wonderful. Thank you, Brenda. That was the conversation about the fundraising that Michael brought up, was really getting my wheels turning too, about, how do we how do we invite all of the different kinds of contributions and live into this sense of abundance in our community versus tying the notion of wealth only to money and making people feel like they can or can't contribute. Because everybody who's here, everybody who's on that list of 350 plus centers who have been touched by the RCC is a part of this work. Is anything else coming up for people? We have time for maybe one or two more before we move into a closing practice. If there's anything that wants to be said, either by voice or in the chat. Oren in the chat says, I feel the creative tension between what is possible for retreat centers and the reality of being an entity in our capitalist economic system. Yes. Thumbs up. 2 thumbs up.
I would like to say something and try to overcome language barrier. I'm a bit jealous that you speak English better than me. And I'm from other side of the world, and I feel like to. Something I understand that in America happens differently. I came to this network from Holistic Centers Network, which I stay in touch from my visit to Omega Institute for Holistic Studies 1993. So it's a long time ago. I'm holding together Croatian Transpersonal Association, and today we are celebrating 30 years of existence. Very surviving 30 years. I'm very curious to hear, and I would like to connect. I'm thinking about my personal transition to other side, and after 40 years of practice, I would like to put my ideas and wrap it up and let it go. And in Croatia, I don't feel much like to have many people to share my ideas, my life work. So I'm wondering it's possible to use this technology and possibility to find people to share and to connect, and feel very nice to be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Congratulations on 30 years, and I wish you the best as you discern what's next. And I'm so glad you're here looking for connection. I was thinking about, when Michael was talking about pitching this idea to the community about resources, I think of for those who listen to public radio in the United States, there's a membership drive, usually a couple times a year, right? Which isn't necessarily a membership, you pay to get something specific, but more membership in this sense of belonging to a community. And there are a lot of different ways that people have found their way to this community, and a lot of different ways they've experienced and expressed that sense of belonging. So I'm glad you're here, Dan. I'm glad everyone's here. We're representing a much larger community than ourselves as well. So thank you for being here, for giving your input and feedback and wisdom. And again, please feel free to reach out if you have other ideas, needs, desires, needs for information, all of that. We really value that connection with the greater community at this time. And I'm going to hand it off to Nanci to lead us in a closing practice.
Thank you, Kirstin. As you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, maybe we do a gifts drive instead of a membership or a money drive. So again, I want to echo the thanks on behalf of the Stewardship Circle for everything today. I want to harken back to Michael's opening and just take a moment, again, take another deep breath, and let the sacred lands that you're on beneath you ground you. Call in your ancestors. I want you to reach up to the sky and hold that beautiful full moon energy that we just went through last night. And we're on the cusp of an eclipse for some of us, a solar eclipse. And I want to echo what was said, that there has never been a more important time for retreat and the work that we're doing together. We are in, as Oren said, a time of evolution. And each turn like this is a becoming. And I want to just close us out with a poem of mine that's a little bit about that. It's called Fireflies. Between the choric, loosely connected spells, the priestess is strung below for her light. Abdomens helplessly flare. There's a blue night sky to hold us. Rotating spheres. Each loud turn a becoming. Whether or not we meet at the glowing, for you, I'll collapse into stars. Thank you, friends.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nanci.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to everyone, our next community call coming up is April 9th, I believe, the day after the eclipse. And I believe the topic is still the same, Kirstin. Is it best practices for leveraging registration systems? So look forward to that, and we hope to see you all there. Bye all.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Steward
Bye.
Council. Appreciate you.